My Stirling single part 63, with constant references to the photograph, the cab whistle starts to take shape, but it still needs some refinement to make it look similar to the full size. This job is not easy. Miniature steam locomotives, as with many other types of models, fall into two distinct categories: scale and semi-scale. Generally speaking, you can tell by looking at the way things are held together. For instance, if you take a look at the external piping, if the unions are actually union nuts, then it's semi-scale. If the pipes have flanges that are held together with nuts and bolts, then that is closer to scale. Personally, I know a couple of model engineers who get everything as scale as possible. I think there's a price to pay for that, and it's called insanity. I've always gone down the quite good semi-scale route. I don't have the patience or the eyesight quality to even see very tiny nuts and bolts. In the clips you've been watching, I'm showing how I made the bottom part of the whistle. It's quite simple really, although difficult at the same time. The shape is critical. What I'm doing here is measuring the size of this piece of brass tube. It's a piece of PM Research brass tube. On each end there is a thread, which is 3/16 by 40 threads per inch. Unfortunately though, the thread pitch is not correct to match the threads that I use. The first thing to do is to clean up this old piece of tube, and I'm using one of these excellent small rotary scouring pads. Here you can see it in action. It's fitted into a Proxxon motor tool held in a bench mount. And this makes very short work of cleaning up the brass tube. It doesn't polish it, it just cleans it and leaves it with a sort of brush finish. The next part of the job, using this, which is a 3/16 by 40 threads per inch ME type die, is to thread one end of the brass tube a bit longer than it's already threaded. This will do two things. It will sort out the existing thread, which is not quite right, and then with the help of the tailstock chuck to keep the die holder straight, I'm threading the brass tube a bit longer. You can see the difference where the old thread is and where the new thread starts. I want to make this dummy whistle mounted to the cab blow out a bit of steam when I blow the main whistle. That's why I'm using this 3/16 brass tubing. The hexagon part, which I found in a box, to my surprise, is not the same thread as the brass tubing. I intend to rethread the hexagon fitting to match the brass tubing. But first I have to drill a hole in the side of the tubing to let the steam out in the bottom part of the whistle. I should have used my small drill stand, but I didn't. I drilled it freehand. The hole is not the best hole I've ever drilled in a piece of tubing, but then again, it's only to let a bit of steam into the bottom part of the whistle. Comparing the parts I've made against the drawing, it's not fully scale, but it gives you the idea of what it's going to look like. The trouble with everything being scale, the parts break off very easily. On the drawing, this part of the whistle is much finer than the one I've made, but I think I can live with it. It looks okay. Time now to work on the top part of the bell whistle. What I'm doing here is using some wet to dry sandpaper to remove the strange colour from the outside of it. I need this part to match the lower part because they are quite similar. It's at times like this that I wish that I had a ball turning attachment to get the shape of the top and bottom correct on the bell, but I don't have one. So what I tend to do is turn it as close as I can get it, finish it off with a file and then polish it up, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. This is 400 grade wet to dry sandpaper, which I find to be really good for polishing parts. It's not too coarse and it's not too fine. When doing jobs like this, it's a really good idea to pull the sandpaper in an upwards direction. That way, if it tears, your fingers go up and away from the chuck and not into the mechanism. In this clip, I'm threading the upper part of the bell whistle using a 3/16 by 40 tap. And now for the important part. I have to turn a flat on the top of the bell. There's a reason for this that will become apparent at the end of the video. The upper part of the bell whistle is bigger than the lower part, and here I'm parting it off even bigger than I need it. I will adjust it later once I've assembled it to see what it all looks like. After threading the hole, I turned the part around in the chuck and drilled it from the other end to give the bell effect. I don't want it to look like a solid lump. After drilling the inside of the bell, I screwed it onto the piece of brass tubing. And here I'm refining the shape. A quick check against the drawing tells me that it's near enough for rock and roll. I need to shorten the tube, and here's the mark which shows where I'm going to shorten it. What I'm doing here is threading the tube using a 5BA tap, which to be honest is not quite big enough, but 4BA would be too big. This is only to screw in the ornamental part right at the end, and it will be held in with some sealant. Here's the whistle assembly bolted in position, and it's nearly there. I think that I need to slim down the two bells. They're a little bit too wide. I did this in the lathe. It's a simple job, but you need to be very gentle with it. I turned down the outside diameter of the two bells, and I did it very gently using the parting tool, which was perfect for the job. This clip shows the whistle refitted to the cab, and it's starting to look a whole lot better. When the whistle is in position, it doesn't look particularly oversized. But I did think that I needed to widen the gap, and also the upper part of the bell I felt was too long. This was a very simple and once again a very gentle job in the lathe. Here I'm using some Brasso wadding to clean up the whistle and a felt pad to polish it. I do want the whistle to be fairly shiny. It will of course go dull over time, but that's okay. Time now for final assembly. Before assembling the whistle, I machined across the top of the bell to make the tube level with the bell itself. After a final polish with a cloth, it's looking good. Making this dummy whistle has been quite a lot of work for such an insignificant part. I did not want a sharp spike sticking out of the top of the whistle, as shown in the photograph, so I made this using a 5BA brass hexagon bolt fitted with a turned down and shaped 6BA nut because it's smaller and looks better. With a tiny bit of sealant, I screwed the part in position, and now it sort of looks alright. When I look at the photograph, it's nowhere near what is on the full size, but I really didn't want a sharp spike sticking up at the top of the cab. This bit isn't perfect, but it looks fine to me. It will look better when I distress it slightly using the rotary scourer. I really think this looks okay. It's all an illusion. When I blow the whistle, a bit of steam will come out of it, but the noise, along with a greater quantity of steam, will come out of the whistle that's under the cab floor. And that is it for this episode, longer than I thought it was going to be. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.